The evening sun was melting behind the hills, spreading a soft orange glow across the open plains. The wind carried the smell of wild sage and dry dust. A lone cowboy rode across the horizon, his hat low, his eyes quiet and deep, the kind of man who had learned to live with silence. His name was Luke Carter, the quiet cowboy of Willow Creek. Folks in town called him the man who never looked back, because that's exactly what he'd done. Left everything behind, built his own world far away from people, and buried his pain deep beneath the sound of his boots on the old wooden porch. That evening, as Luke crossed the narrow trail near the river, he noticed something strange, a figure sitting near the water, still as stone. At first, he thought it was just another wanderer, but when he got closer, his horse stopped on its own, as if even the animal could sense something heavy in the air. It was a woman. Her hair was long and dark, braided loosely, falling over her shoulders. Her clothes were torn, her hands covered in dust. Her eyes, those eyes, were filled with something beyond sadness. She wasn't crying. She'd gone past that point. She was empty, like someone who had lost everything and didn't even have the strength left to grieve. Luke didn't say a word. He dismounted, walked slowly toward her, boots crunching on dry pebbles. "You lost, ma'am?" he asked softly. The woman turned her face toward him, her lips trembling. I lost my family today." Luke froze. She took a deep breath, her voice breaking. "They were all I had. My mother, my little brother, gone. The fire took everything." Her voice cracked on that last word, and her eyes finally let go of the tears she'd been holding back. For a moment, the world around them went quiet. The river whispered, the wind softened, the evening sky turned purple. Luke didn't know what to say. He had seen pain before, in wars, in the eyes of widows, in the mirror, but something about this woman's voice cut through every wall he'd built around himself. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anaya," she whispered, "from the White Hills tribe." Luke nodded slowly. "You got somewhere to go, Anaya?" She shook her head. "Nowhere." Her eyes met his. Can you take me with you?" Luke looked away. He wasn't a man who took people in. His life was made of solitude, built from scars he didn't want anyone to touch. But the way she said those words, not as a request, but as the last hope of a soul holding on to its final breath, it struck something deep in him. He walked back to his horse, stood there for a moment, and then turned around. "Get up," he said. "I'll take you as far as my ranch." Anaya hesitated, then nodded. She walked slowly toward him, every step trembling. When Luke offered his hand, she looked at it for a long second before placing hers in his. Her hand was cold. The ride to the ranch was silent. The stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. Luke kept his eyes forward, but he could feel the weight of her sorrow beside him. He didn't ask questions. He just rode on. When they reached his ranch, the windmill creaked softly in the wind. The little wooden house stood under a wide sky filled with stars. An old lantern burned on the porch, casting a warm light. "You can stay in the guest room," Luke said as he tied his horse. "Ain't much, but it's warm." Anaya looked around. It was quiet, peaceful, a place that felt alive even in its loneliness. Inside, Luke lit the fire in the small stone fireplace. The flames danced slowly, filling the room with golden light. He poured her some water, and she held the cup with both hands, like it was the first warmth she'd felt all day. "You live alone?" she asked after a long silence. "Yeah," Luke said. "Been that way a while." Anaya nodded quietly. "You must like the quiet." Luke looked into the fire. "Used to. Now it's just what's left." They sat in silence again. Two souls, one broken by loss, the other by memories. Later that night, when Luke stepped out on the porch, he saw her standing by the rail, looking up at the stars. The moonlight touched her face softly. "I used to believe stars carried the spirits of those who left us," she said without turning. "My mother used to tell me that." Luke leaned on the railing beside her. Maybe she was right. Anaya smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurt more than it healed. "Thank you for bringing me here," she whispered. Luke nodded. "You can stay as long as you need." But deep inside, something in him had already changed. He didn't know why he'd stopped that day. Maybe fate had its own ways, quiet, subtle ways of bringing two lost hearts together under the same sky. As the night deepened, Anaya closed her eyes for the first time in days. She slept by the warmth of the fire, while Luke sat by the window, looking out into the vast emptiness. He told himself he was helping a stranger, but his heart knew better. Something had begun that night, something neither of them could explain. And for the first time in years, the lonely cowboy didn't feel alone.